"You're pathetic," my daughter said, loud enough that the clinking of forks and wine glasses stopped cold. "You left Mom over something that happened 20 years ago. Grow up." She was standing, arms crossed, that condescending smirk on her face, my smirk, ironically, while my sister-in-law choked on her Pinot Grigio and the turkey carved 5 minutes ago began to cool. The entire dining room, packed with relatives I barely tolerated even when I was still pretending to be happily married, went dead silent. The mashed potatoes were still steaming. My son-in-law froze mid-bite, looking like he wanted to disappear into the stuffing. I didn't shout. I didn't throw the glass of bourbon I was holding. I didn't say a word. I just smiled, the kind of smile that makes people deeply uncomfortable when they realize you know something they don't. Then I reached under the table, pulled out the plain manila folder I had brought in instead of dessert, and laid it in front of her like I was sliding over a legal contract. 2 sheets. Just 2. I tapped them once with my finger, looked her in the eye, and said, calm as ever, 30 minutes. Pack. She blinked, confused at first. Then the edges of her mouth twitched downward. She opened the folder with a performative huff, like she expected to find some kind of half-baked emotional letter about how hurt I was. Some desperate plea for understanding. She was wrong. She stared at the first page, the DNA report. Black text, white paper, government seal. Neatly highlighted in yellow was the phrase probability of paternity, 0%. Then she flipped to the second page. A printout with a photo of a man she didn't recognize. Under the photo, an address in Arizona. A business card was stapled to the corner, Marcus J. Holloway, financial advisor. The man who, 23 years ago, had apparently been more than just a friend to my wife. Her hand shook. Not dramatically. Just a slight tremble, enough for me to notice, and enough for her to realize I noticed. She looked up, and her voice cracked for the first time in years. "What is this?" I sipped my bourbon. "A destination." Then I stood, adjusted my blazer, and said it again, this time louder, for the whole table, 30 minutes. Pack. I didn't look at my ex-wife. I didn't need to. I could feel her tense across the table like a predator finally realizing the trap it just walked into. Her face flushed red, not from embarrassment, but from calculation. The silence was so thick, even the dog stopped begging for scraps. My brother muttered, "What the hell is going on?" My niece tried to lighten the mood with a nervous chuckle. No one joined her. And me? I just stepped away from the table, left the dining room, and walked out the front door into the cold November air, lighting a cigarette I hadn't touched in over a decade. Let them sit in that. Let them marinate in it. Because here's what none of them knew. Not my daughter, not my ex, not the army of performative relatives. I didn't come to Thanksgiving to make peace. I came to bury the illusion. And the funeral had just started. It was 2:14 a.m. when my phone buzzed. One of those pathetic vibrations you ignore the first time because you're half asleep and assume it's spam. But then it buzzed again. And again. Persistent. I groaned, reached over Haley's childhood photo frame on the nightstand, and checked the screen. Unknown number. 3 missed calls. And now, a voicemail. I don't know what made me listen. Maybe it was the fact that my house had been so silent lately, like even the walls were holding their breath. Or maybe it was because something in me, something primal, knew the sound I was about to hear would change everything. I pressed play. Slurred. Male. Southern accent. The kind you pick up after a few years of cheap whiskey and too many failed marriages. I.e., Alex, you ever wonder why Haley doesn't look a damn thing like you? I froze. She's got my eyes, you know? I mean, your wife, ex-wife, whatever, she probably told you it was just a one-time thing, right? Funny, man. So funny. She used to call me when you were in Denver. Every damn time. Click. That was it. No name. No explanation. Just that. I sat up in bed, suddenly hyper-aware of every shadow in the room. The digital clock's blue glow seemed to burn my retinas. I replayed the voicemail 3 times. I knew that voice. I knew it. Something deep in the marrow of my bones recognized it. Marcus. Marcus Holloway. That scrawny, smug bastard from her office 20-some years ago. He used to flirt with every woman at the Christmas parties, had this thing where he'd wink like he was God's gift to finance. And back then, I didn't think twice of it. I was too busy building a life, paying mortgages, planning birthdays, replacing water heaters, I didn't have time for suspicion. But now, in the dead quiet of my bedroom, those words replayed in my head like a metronome from hell. She's got my eyes, she used to call me, when you were in Denver. I got up, walked to the bathroom, turned on the light, and looked at my reflection. Then I pulled a photo off the fridge. Haley at 16. Her senior portrait. My jaw. My hairline. My posture. But the eyes? Not mine. And not my wife's either. They were this weird golden brown, like burnt amber. I always chalked it up to some recessive gene on my wife's side. Her great aunt had eyes like that, I think. Or maybe it was just a trick of the light. But now? Now I couldn't stop staring at that damn photo. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I didn't toss or turn either. I just laid there, motionless, thinking, rewinding 2 decades of parenting and wondering what parts of it were real. I remembered Haley's first word, Dada. I remembered teaching her how to ride a bike. I remembered the time she broke her wrist climbing the neighbor's tree, and I sat in the ER for 7 hours holding her other hand. What if none of it mattered? What if I was just the idiot who paid for someone else's screw-up? The next morning, I didn't confront anyone. I didn't start screaming accusations. I didn't even return Marcus's call. That would have been too easy, too messy. Instead, I bought a DNA test online. 2-day shipping. $299. I didn't tell my wife. I didn't even hint. I just waited for Haley to come over for her weekly Sunday lunch, like nothing was wrong. She tossed her toothbrush into the bathroom drawer after freshening up. I slipped it into a sterile bag 10 minutes later. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I'd open the results and feel like a fool for doubting, that it was just a drunk idiot trying to stir up old flames. But that night, as I stood in the kitchen holding that tiny bag with a toothbrush and 20 years' worth of doubt, I realized something chilling. I wasn't hoping the test would clear my conscience. I was afraid it would confirm what I already knew. The email came at 11:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line, your DNA results are ready. I was sitting in my office, staring at a spreadsheet that might as well have been written in ancient Greek. I hadn't been able to focus for days. Every task I touched dissolved into white noise. Every email a pointless formality. The only tab that mattered was the one with the lab's tracking number, which I'd refreshed so often the browser started autoloading it before I even finished typing. I opened the message. Heart not racing, not trembling, not even braced. I already knew. The PDF loaded slowly. My mouse hovered. 1 click. Paternity probability, 0%. I stared at it. Not with shock, not even with anger, just a dull, hollow awareness. Like staring at a gun that already went off, the bullet long gone. The damage already done. And then I laughed. I laughed so loud the guy in the office next to mine knocked on the wall and said, "Hey, you okay in there? What do you say to that?" "Yeah, man, just found out my daughter's not mine. You know, Tuesday stuff." The laughter wouldn't stop. It crawled up from somewhere deep in my gut and came out like dry heaving. I bent forward, clutching my stomach, choking on it. The kind of laughter you only ever hear in war movies, where the guy just lost his entire squad and laughs because it's the only thing left between him and total madness. I slammed the laptop shut, wiped my eyes, and sat there staring at the beige wall in front of me like it held answers. Nothing moved. The blinds swayed slightly from the air vent. That was it. Everything else in my world had just collapsed into stillness. 22 years. 22 years of recitals, parent-teacher nights, scraped knees, sleepovers, late-night talks, graduation parties. 22 years of birthdays I planned, doctor appointments I paid for, fears I calmed. All now retroactively. What? A performance? Was I just the fill-in? The accidental father? The oblivious chump standing in for some ghost named Marcus who apparently had her eyes? I didn't go home that night. I drove. Nowhere in particular. Ended up parked in the back lot of a supermarket I hadn't shopped at in over a decade. I sat there for hours, staring at the lives happening behind glowing windows. Watching strangers walk in and out with bags full of groceries, conversations, distractions. All of them blissfully unaware of the kind of quiet that sits inside your chest when you find out your child isn't yours. When you realize you were never even in the photograph. I didn't cry. That was the strangest part. No tears. Not one. Just that sick laugh I kept replaying in my head. And I didn't tell my wife. Not that night. Not the next. Because how do you confront someone who built your whole life out of a lie? How do you walk into your own home, look the woman you thought you knew in the eyes, and say, "Hey, remember that little girl you swore was mine?" Yeah, turns out she's not. So I said nothing. I played my part. We had dinner. We watched our stupid shows. She talked about the neighbors like everything was normal. I nodded. I smiled. I asked questions. I even did the dishes. Because when you find out your whole reality is a forgery, you don't flip the table. You start preparing the fire. The thing about liars is, they get lazy. Especially the ones who think they're smarter than you. They start believing in their own illusion, their own charm, their ability to gaslight you into oblivion with a smile and a hand on your arm. So when I started digging, it wasn't because I hoped to find some explanation. I wasn't praying for a loophole. I was hunting. And I knew the scent would lead me somewhere ugly. It was in the attic, of all places. She'd asked me 100 times to clean it out. I always told her I'd get to it, and of course I never did. Too busy, too tired, too not giving a shit about seasonal decorations and dusty luggage. But after the DNA results, I made time. The first hour was boxes, Christmas lights, fake wreaths, a baby monitor we hadn't used since Haley was 5. Then an old Rubbermaid bin, the kind you slap a donate sticker on and forget about for 20 years. Inside, her college notebooks, a sorority sweatshirt, a mixed CD labeled Spring Break 2001 red heart and loopy pink marker, and wedged between the sleeves of an old cardigan, something heavy, something leather-bound, a journal. Not the kind with a lock or some teenage doodles. This one was adult, practical, covered in little sticky tabs, pages folded at the corners. I sat down on the attic floor. The insulation itched through my jeans. The light bulb above me flickered like it knew what was coming. I opened to a random page. July 2002. We were 2 years into our marriage. Haley was a baby. I was flying out twice a month for client meetings in Detroit and Denver. She was, supposedly, overwhelmed and staying with her sister when I was gone. The entry read, 5. That's the number. I keep trying to feel guilty, but I don't. I needed it. Marcus was the best. God, the things he whispered to me. I miss that. I keep thinking about him. The others were just chaos. Alex will never know. He was in Denver that week. He trusts me too much. It's almost funny. I didn't move. Didn't even blink. I flipped forward. September 2003. Alex bought me a necklace today. I wanted to scream. He's so good to me, and I feel nothing. Just this low boil of resentment. I keep picturing Marcus's hands on me. How alive I felt. Is it bad that I wish Haley had his nose? God, that sounds awful. But sometimes I want there to be a piece of him left. I closed the journal. My hands were shaking. Not from pain. Not even from betrayal. It was that kind of controlled rage, deep, coiled, volcanic, so dense it feels cold. Like ice inside your ribs. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This wasn't a drunken regret before we were married. This was a pattern, a structure, a double life built alongside mine like a second house with better wallpaper. 5 men. 5. And she'd written about it like it was therapy, like it was art, like every entry was some twisted confessional in which I was the audience and the punchline. The worst part? Her tone. So casual, so smug, like she knew she'd get away with it forever. And maybe she would have, if Marcus had kept his drunk mouth shut, if I had kept ignoring the eye color, if I had kept telling myself that my gut was just tired, not screaming. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I took the journal, made copies of the pages I needed, resealed the bin exactly how I'd found it, and put everything back in the attic. She'd never notice, because she never imagined I'd look. She never imagined I'd doubt. And now? Now I knew she'd been lying every damn day of our marriage, with a straight face, with the same lips that kissed our daughter goodnight, with the same hands that wrapped Christmas gifts with my name on the tag. I wasn't just betrayed. I was insulted. And that's the kind of fire no apology puts out. That morning, I made breakfast like it was any other Saturday. Eggs over medium. Bacon, just how she likes it. Crispy on the edge, chewy in the middle. Fresh sourdough toast. French press coffee. Strawberries sliced into little hearts, like I used to do when Haley was 5 and thought I was a magician. The only new addition to the table was a neat stack of paper, placed dead center like a sacred offering. DNA test. Photocopies of the journal entries. Marcus's photo. And on top of it all, a yellow post-it with a single word, scrawled in Sharpie. Proof. She walked into the kitchen with that breezy, photomestic energy I'd grown to loathe. Silk robe, mascara already on, the smell of her citrus shampoo arriving 5 seconds before she did, like an ambassador announcing royalty. She glanced at the table, smiled like I'd just painted her a watercolor sunset. Look at you, Mr. Gourmet. What's the occasion? She sat down, unfolded a napkin like it was brunch in Napa, and reached for the toast. Didn't even glance at the papers. Not really. She saw them, sure. But in that first second, she assumed it was nothing. She thought I was still the same docile Alex she married. Predictable, passive, dull. I poured coffee into her mug. Breakfast, I said. She cocked her head. And the documents. I stared at her. And a funeral. The air shifted. Not dramatically, just enough to make her pause mid-bite. She picked up the DNA report first, read the header, then looked up at me. I watched the gears turn behind her eyes. Denial was her first instinct. Not confusion. Not guilt. Just strategy. She thumbed through the journal copies next. Her mouth parted, but no sound came out. When she hit the Marcus pages, he has her eyes, he'll never know. 5 men. That's when I saw the corner of her lip twitch. But still no panic. She leaned back in the chair, crossed her arms, and exhaled. You really went digging, huh? I tilted my head. You left the shovel in the attic. Silence. And then she smiled. Like the goddamn Cheshire cat. I swear to God. It was the same look she gave the neighbor that one time she backed into his car and talked her way out of it. Okay, she said. Calm. Controlled. So you snooped. You found things from decades ago. I mean, Jesus, Alex. I thought you were above this. But if you want to rehash ancient history, fine. Let's do it. Ancient? I asked. Which part? Haley not being mine. Or Marcus still calling you on Christmas Eve? Her face twitched. Slightly. Still, she played her part. I never said I was perfect. But we've built a life. A family. And you're throwing it away over some journal entries I wrote when I was confused and... Confused. I cut in. Was it the 4th guy or the 5th that really tripped you up? That wiped the smug off her face. Just in time for Haley to walk in. She was still in pajamas, hair a mess, rubbing her eyes. What's going on? My wife, ex-wife in waiting, perked right up. Oh, just your father playing detective. I said nothing. I just slid the papers toward the center of the table. Haley glanced down. She read the word paternity and blinked. She looked at me, then her mother, then back at the paper. It didn't take her long. Her voice came out soft, uncertain. What is this? I'm not your biological father, I said. Your mother has known. For a long time. My wife scoffed. That's not proven. It's, Alex, this is insane. We're going to destroy everything over this. No, I said, standing. You already did. But then Haley did something I didn't expect. She looked at me, jaw tight, eyes sharp, and said, So what? You're seriously going to blow up our family because of something Mom did before you were even married? Before I could respond, she added, You're pathetic. It landed harder than anything I'd ever heard in my life. Not because it was cruel, but because it was hers, Haley, my daughter, the one I taught to ride a bike, who I held when she had night terrors, the one I called Pumpkin until she made me stop in middle school. And in that moment, she chose her mother, the woman who lied, who wrote about Marcus like a fantasy, who betrayed me over and over and laughed about it in ink. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I just smiled again, same as I did on Thanksgiving. Then I pulled the address out of my pocket, the one Marcus gave me when he texted. She might want to meet me someday. I placed it in front of Haley and whispered, 30 minutes. Pack. Wow, Haley said, holding the DNA report like it was a parking ticket she refused to acknowledge. You actually went through with this? You seriously tested me behind my back. She wasn't yelling. That would have made this easier. No, her tone was the quiet, surgical one, cold steel pretending to be silk. Her hand trembled just a little, but her face didn't crack. Not even close. She had her mother's composure. And apparently her loyalty too. You know what? She added, eyes locking onto mine. You're pathetic. The word hit like a slap across the face, but I didn't blink. I just sat there, arms folded, coffee going cold next to me. She threw the folder back onto the table and the papers fanned out. One sheet slid across the surface and stopped near my elbow, Marcus's photo grinning like an idiot under the fluorescent light of some budget print center. Even now, even here, the bastard looked smug. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. Instead, I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a small white envelope, and slid it toward her. The flap was already unsealed. She didn't touch it right away, just stared at it like it might explode. "What's this?" she asked. "A key," I said, "and an address." She opened it slowly, like she was performing surgery. Inside was a single sheet of paper, neatly typed. Marcus J. Holloway, Phoenix, Arizona. A condo number. A phone. Underneath that, call first. He doesn't know what kind of person you've become. Haley looked up, lips parting slightly. That bravado? Gone. Just for a second. There was something beneath it, confusion, maybe. Or guilt. Or the slow realization that her moral compass had been duct taped to her mother's chest for years. "I don't want this," she muttered. "That makes two of us." She stood, gripped the chair, let go, took a step toward the sink like she might actually throw it all away, literally. But she didn't. She just hovered. "I don't understand why you're doing this." She made mistakes. A long time ago. You're acting like I'm a crime scene, like everything was a lie. I finally looked her in the eye. "It was," I said. "And the worst part? You knew something didn't add up. All those years. You knew. You just didn't want to know." She turned her back to me. I let the silence drag, because she needed to sit in it. All of it. 22 years I gave her. Every school project. Every stomach flu. Every broken heart. I played the fool in her fairy tale. And the moment the curtain fell and I said the word truth, she labeled me pathetic. No tears. No curiosity. Just blind, seething defense of the woman who lied to us both. I stood, slow and deliberate, walked over to the door, and opened it. 30 minutes, I said. Pack. She turned around, blinking, confused. "What? You wanted honesty? That's it. I can't be your dad if the price is swallowing poison for another 20 years. You're kicking me out," she said, stunned. "I'm handing you freedom. You want her version of reality? Go live in it. But not under my roof. Not after this." For a moment, I thought she'd scream, that she'd crumble, that something in her would snap, and the daughter I raised would crawl back through the cracks. But no. She nodded. Cold. Detached. Almost robotic. "Fine," she said. "Fine." She grabbed the envelope and walked upstairs without another word. And me? I stood there by the door, hearing every creak of the floorboards above me, every drawer opening, every zipper pulled. The hardest part wasn't letting her go. It was realizing she never really belonged to me in the first place. She came to the house 2 days later, like nothing had happened. I was outside, pruning the dead hydrangeas along the fence line, half because they needed it, half because I needed something I could tear apart without going to prison. She parked on the street, not in the driveway. That told me everything. Not ashamed, just strategic. When I saw her stilettos click their way up the path, sunglasses still on despite the overcast sky, I knew exactly which version of her I'd get today. The performer. "Alex," she said sweetly, like she hadn't detonated a landmine under 22 years of my life. "Can we talk?" I didn't answer right away. I pulled another wilted stem, tossed it in the bucket, then finally stood and dusted off my gloves. "You're on the clock," I said flatly. She gave a small laugh, fake and sharp. "Look, I think we've both overreacted. Things got emotional. Understandably. But I think you're letting yourself spiral here. This isn't you." I raised an eyebrow. "You think I'm spiraling?" She took off the sunglasses. Her eyes were stone cold, but her lips curled like she'd already won. "I mean, come on, Alex. A paternity test? Digging through old journals like you're Sherlock Holmes? You really think that's going to hold up in any kind of legal scenario? That's not evidence. It's a technicality." There it was. The word. Technicality. She honestly thought she could frame 2 decades of betrayal, lies, and manipulation like it was a misplaced decimal point on a tax form. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "You're upset. I get that. I understand. But this doesn't have to be a war. I mean..." Haley's siding with me. You really want to isolate yourself completely just to prove some angry point. I stared at her, letting that smug, seasoned manipulation hang in the air like a bad perfume. Then I slowly pulled my phone out of my back pocket, unlocked it, and turned the screen toward her. A photo of a leather briefcase. Open. Inside. Journal pages. Printouts. Financial transfers. Phone records. A notarized copy of Haley's birth certificate with the original paternity form. And a typed letterhead. Rosen, Beckman, and Claymore. Family Law Division. Her smile twitched. This, I said, isn't about Haley. It's about you. And the paper trail you left for 20 goddamn years because you thought I'd never look. She tried to mask the flinch. She failed. You went to a lawyer? She asked, her voice cracking just slightly. I nodded. 2, actually. The second one was a recommendation from a guy I golf with. He specializes in asset tracing and reputation fallout. He's very good. I let that land. She blinked. Once. Twice. Alex, she said, adjusting her tone, softening. Come on. Don't do this. Don't turn this into something it doesn't have to be. Oh, I'm not turning it into anything, I said. You did. Every hotel room. Every lie. Every little moment you looked me in the eyes and told me we were solid. Her jaw clenched. And now, I added, now, I'm just filing the paperwork. She took a breath. I could see her panic trying to bury itself under her teeth. Her fingers twitched at her side like they were grasping for something that wasn't there anymore. Alex, she said, her voice low. Let's not blow up both of our lives over this. You want to be angry? Fine. Be angry. But think. Just think. You really think people are going to take your side when they find out what you're doing to your own daughter? I gave a slow smile. Funny thing about people, I said. They love a good redemption story. Especially when the villain never saw it coming. She stood there, quiet now. Her silence wasn't smug anymore. It was nervous. Uncertain. The cracks were forming. She'd come here thinking she had leverage. What she didn't realize was this wasn't a conversation. This was a notification. 3 days later, I pressed send on an email that had been sitting in my drafts folder for almost a week. To Executive Director, Bridges for Families Foundation. Subject, regarding volunteer conduct, urgent. Attached were 6 PDF files. Annotated copies of her journal pages. Screenshots of financial inconsistencies involving donations. A timeline of hotel visits that coincided miraculously with volunteer retreats. And one neat little recording of her bragging, after 2 glasses of Merlot, that nonprofits are basically tax-free spas if you know how to smile at the board. It wasn't vengeance. It was arithmetic. Just math. Just cause and effect. She had built her image like a carefully curated Instagram feed. Philanthropic wife, devoted mother, radiant mentor to young women at risk. She made speeches about female empowerment and heels worth more than most people's rent. She chaired committees. She schmoozed with donors. She wrote blogs, for God's sake, about ethical leadership in uncertain times. And now? Now I had stacked enough receipts to bankrupt a televangelist. I didn't even have to do anything theatrical. No press leaks. No anonymous tips to reporters. Just CC the right people. With the right files. 48 hours later, her world began to burn. She was removed from the foundation website with surgical speed. No statement. No thank you for your service. Just a quiet disappearance, like she'd never existed. The staff removed her name from event banners. Her corporate bio vanished. Her email stopped working. Then came the real fun. Her joint credit card got declined at a salon, an expensive one. She tried again. Declined. Again. Declined. Why? Because, thanks to my very capable lawyer, I froze the accounts pending an emergency financial audit. And as it turns out, when you've moved personal funds into nonprofit accounts and back again under creative labels like event recovery and operational morale, banks get very interested. I didn't hear from her until 9:17 that night. My phone rang, and I let it vibrate twice before answering. Her voice was a cocktail of rage and panic. What the hell did you do? I held the phone away from my ear for a second, like I was examining a bug on my windshield. Oh hey, I said. How's that ethical leadership thing working out for you? You're sick, she spat. You just ruined my life, for what? For some paternity test? You think this makes you a hero? You're destroying me. I waited a beat, then said quietly, "No, this isn't destruction." She didn't respond right away. I could hear her breathing, erratic, uneven, cornered. "This," I continued, "isn't revenge. It's restoration. You arrogant son of a—" "I'm not yelling," I said. "Why are you yelling?" She tried to pivot. "Haley knows. She knows what you're doing. She told me about the envelope. You're turning her against me." "No," I said. "You did that when you made her the centerpiece of your lie." There was a long silence. I imagined her pacing in some high-end kitchen, barefoot, phone clutched in one hand, glass of Pinot she hadn't touched in the other, watching everything unravel while still trying to pretend it was just a glitch. "I'll sue," she whispered finally. "You'd have to prove I lied," I said. Spoiler alert, I didn't. Click. I didn't hang up. She did. I sat there in my chair for a moment, staring out the window. Outside, the wind was picking up. The streetlights flickered. Somewhere, a dog barked at nothing. And me? I finally exhaled. No rage. No regret. Just the soft hum of justice in motion. It started with a message from someone I barely remembered. Julie K., Maureen's old friend. Used to come around during the early years of our marriage, before drifting off like so many seasonal friends do. Subject line, "Hey, I think you should know this." Inside, a 2-paragraph email, oddly formal, apologetic in tone, but with a sentence that stopped me cold. I should have said something years ago, but I was afraid of what she'd do to me. Maureen didn't just cheat with Marcus. There were others. Miami, Palm Springs, Seattle. If you need proof. I have it. I didn't respond right away. I stared at the screen like it had grown fangs. Then, calmly, I closed my office door and wrote back one sentence. "I need everything." She replied within 10 minutes. What followed was an avalanche. Photos from a 2010 charity conference in Miami, Maureen in a halter dress, wrapped around a man named Kyle. Different from Marcus. Definitely not a board member. A forwarded chain of text from 2015, Maureen bragging about a retreat in Seattle where the keynote wasn't the only thing that blew me away, smirking face. Screenshots, emails, even receipts. Hotel bookings charged to an account under her maiden name. Dates that lined up perfectly with weekends she claimed were mother-daughter spa trips. And Julie wasn't the only one. Within days, 2 more women, Linda and Angela, came forward. Both had known her during different phases of her philanthropy. Both had stories that mirrored each other like broken glass patterns. Maureen would always say she needed to recharge, go find clarity, and off she'd go. Always with some cover story that sounded noble. Mentorship retreats, women's workshops, leadership panels. But she was never alone. She was always with someone. Each time, a different name. Each time, the same strategy. Erase the trail, discredit suspicion, gaslight the man who waited at home with dinner warming in the oven. And I collected it all. I didn't gloat. I didn't rush. I created folders, organized by year, by city, by name. I tagged dates, cross-referenced timestamps. I built a timeline so tight even a prosecutor would blush. By week's end, I had a dossier. 54 pages. I printed it on heavy paper. Bound it. Black cover. No title. Just clean, cold truth. I gave a copy to my lawyer. I made another for safekeeping. And one more for her. No threats. No drama. Just placed it in a nondescript envelope with a sticky note. "You lied better than most. But not well enough." I mailed it to her office. And while she continued sipping wine and drafting apologies for her break from the foundation, I was already preparing the next phase. A video compilation. Set to go live. A silent montage of stills and screenshots, names redacted, identities protected, except hers. Dates. Cities. Hotel logos. Timestamp text from 3 different lovers. A map at the end showing the full pattern, the strategy, the long con. I wasn't aiming to destroy her. I was going to reveal her. Peel back the layers, let the world see the woman behind the mask. Not the one who cried at fundraisers, or held Haley's hand at graduations, or offered wisdom to younger couples like she was a walking Lifetime movie. No, the real Maureen. The one who thought no one was watching. And she still had no idea what was coming. The video dropped on a Thursday at 6 p.m. sharp. right when everyone was home, right when the suburban gods of timing blessed Facebook feeds, wine glasses, and local charity groups settling in for their end-of-week dopamine hits. No teasers, no warning, just a quiet post from a burner account. Who is Maureen D? The other side of a nonprofit queen. No commentary, no hashtags, no outrage bait, just a single link. Within 30 minutes, it had over 3,000 views. By midnight, 28,000. It opened with a soft piano track, something tasteful, almost too tasteful for what followed. The first image, Maureen, smiling at a podium during a Women in Leadership luncheon, one hand over her heart. Then the crossfade to a hotel invoice in Palm Springs, dated 3 days earlier. Then text messages. Can't wait to sneak away again, kiss mark. He's in Denver this week, we're good, winking face. Then a brief clip of her diary entry, zoomed in on the line. Alex is too busy, too dull. Marcus made me feel again. Then financial records. Split screen with donation logs. Her signature, next to a withdrawal marked emergency vendor cost. The same weekend she'd flown to Miami with someone named Jared. Each slide calmly narrated by a woman's voice. AI-generated, professional, eerily neutral. Like a documentary about fraud you stumble onto at 2 a.m. No commentary. No insults. Just documentation. By the 8-minute mark, her face was unrecognizable from the persona she'd curated over decades. By the 10-minute mark, the comments exploded. Some outraged, some gleeful, some in denial. And by the 12-minute mark, the final image, a quote from Maureen's own speech 3 years earlier. The truth always comes out, even when it whispers. Then it cut to black. I didn't smile. Not right away. I just stared at the screen in my study, lights off, fingers steepled under my chin, watching it go viral in real time. One foundation board member unfollowed her. Another publicly reconsidered their association. By morning, 2 major donors issued statements reviewing the disturbing allegations. And by noon the next day, Good Day Metro ran a segment. Local philanthropist faces ethical scrutiny after anonymous video surfaces. Her name was Fire. Her brand? Ash. And me? I poured a whiskey. Just one. Neat. Around 3:24 p.m., my phone buzzed. Text from Haley. We need to talk. No emojis. No punctuation fluff. Just those 4 words. For a moment, I didn't move. Let the phone sit face up on the table while I watched the ice in my glass melt just a little. When the knock came, it was soft. Hesitant. I opened the door to see her standing there, hoodie, tired eyes, phone clutched in one hand like a lifeline. She looked older than she had a week ago. Not in age. In gravity. I saw the video, she said quietly. I nodded. Stepped aside. She walked into the kitchen. Same place where she called me pathetic days ago. Same counter where she sided with a lie she never built, but eagerly protected. She didn't sit. Neither did I. She started, then stopped. Why did you? I mean this? The public part? Why go that far? I didn't answer right away. Just stared at her until she lowered her gaze. I warned her, I said. She smiled. She said it was a technicality, that I wouldn't do anything. But the video is truth, I said. I didn't spin it. I didn't edit her words. That was her doing. She swallowed. Hard. I didn't know it was this bad. Didn't want to know. I corrected. There's a difference. She looked like she wanted to cry. Or punch something. Maybe both. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Then don't, I said. And I turned my back. Because what do you say to someone who watched you drown and only screamed after you washed up on shore? She came back the next evening. No warning. No text this time. Just the low knock. 3 slow taps. Like she was asking permission from a ghost. When I opened the door, Haley stood there with red eyes and a crumpled piece of paper in her hand. The DNA results. The same one she'd thrown across the table during that breakfast from hell. Now it looked like she'd been carrying it around like a confession she couldn't burn. I didn't say a word. She walked in, sat at the kitchen island. Same stool, same spot, same chipped corner she used to trace with her fingers when she was 12 and waiting for pancakes. She unfolded the page, smoothed it out like it was sacred. I looked it up, she said. Read everything. About paternity probabilities. Legal fathers. Biological fathers. All of it. I nodded. She didn't look at me, just stared at the paper. And yeah, she whispered. You were right. The sentence should have felt like vindication. A full circle moment. Some movie-ending resolution. It didn't. It felt like ashes in my mouth. She lied. Haley continued. To you. To me. For years. I kept trying to find a version of the truth where she wasn't the villain. Where maybe you were overreacting. Where maybe I didn't have to choose. Her voice cracked on that last word. I wanted to believe she was just flawed. Just scared. But she wasn't. She was deliberate. I nodded again. Still didn't speak. Haley finally looked up, eyes wet but defiant. You were always there, she said. For everything. My first dance. College move-in day. That time I totaled the Camry. You didn't even yell, just handed me the insurance card and said, we all screw up once. A faint smile tried to crawl across her lips. It died quickly. But now, she swallowed. Now I don't know who you are. That landed harder than any insult. Because it was true. I wasn't the same man. Not the same dad. Not the same anything. The DNA didn't just erase biology. It rewired every memory between us. She was still Haley. But I wasn't her anymore. And she knew it. I want to fix it, she said. But I don't know how. And I don't know if it even matters to you now. I leaned forward, elbows on the counter, and finally spoke. You're not the reason I burned it down, I said. But you stood close enough to watch it happen. And you didn't move. She flinched. Tears slid down, silent and clean. I'm not angry, I added. Not anymore. But you don't love me, she whispered. No, I said. I do. But it's not the same love. It's quieter now. Cautious. We sat there like that, two people trying to figure out if blood was ever the thing that held us together in the first place. And when I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd find some fragile path back, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single text. I warned you not to go public. You're going to regret this. M. I turned the screen toward Haley. She read it. Her face shifted. She knew the tone. She'd heard it her entire life. She's not done, she said. No, I replied. But neither am I. Because if she thought what I'd done so far was revenge, she hadn't even seen the final move. It happened on a Tuesday. I was walking out of my lawyer's office with a fresh set of financial documents under my arm, clear, crisp proof of every shell game Maureen had ever played. The sunlight was sharp, the air too clean for what was about to follow. Two plainclothes officers approached as I unlocked my car. Mr. Dalton? One asked, already pulling out a badge. I nodded. You're under investigation for domestic assault. We'd like you to come with us. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask, what is this about? Because I already knew. They cuffed me, gently, apologetically, almost like they'd been briefed to expect someone calm. Someone prepared. I was. At the station, they walked me into a cold interview room with a flickering ceiling light and a one-way mirror like something out of a bargain crime drama. Then came the accusation. She claims, the detective said, you showed up to her apartment 3 nights ago. That you forced your way in. That you grabbed her, screamed at her, left bruises. I looked him in the eye and said, check the timestamp. He blinked. Excuse me. My phone location data. Uber receipt. Restaurant security footage. I was at Walter's Steakhouse from 7:12 p.m. to 10:03 p.m. with my attorney. We split a bottle of cab. His tab's in the system. He's also willing to testify. Want the receipt? He stared at me for a long beat. No bruises in the medical report either, right? Just verbal aggression and emotional distress. Which is interesting, considering she initiated contact by text the night before. I slid my phone across the table. Opened to a message Maureen had sent, timestamped, cheerful tone. I'm willing to talk. Just us. No lawyers. Come by Friday night? I'll leave the door unlocked. I waited as he read it. Twice. Then slowly turned the screen off. I'll need to verify this. Of course, I said, folding my hands. Please do. 2 hours later, I was walking free. No charges filed. No mugshot. Just a brief signature and a faintly embarrassed nod from the detective who mumbled, we'll be in touch. I didn't smile until I was in the car. Because I knew exactly what this was. Maureen had made her final move. A desperate Hail Mary pass in a game she was already losing. She didn't want justice. She wanted the optics. The chaos. She wanted to drag me into the mud and scream, "Look, he's just as dirty." But I came armored. Every conversation logged. Every interaction recorded. I had prepared for war, and she had brought an empty pistol. 2 weeks later, in court, she stood there in a beige suit 2 sizes too big and tears painted on her cheeks, telling the judge I was aggressive, vindictive, dangerous. My lawyer let her hang herself. Then we brought the timeline. The receipts. The texts. The video. The judge didn't even ask for a recess. Motion to dismiss, granted. Her countersuit for emotional damages, denied. Her plea to retain shared assets, denied. And her final insult, that I was a threat to my daughter? It was shredded when Haley herself submitted a written statement admitting the accusation made no sense. Still, she didn't sit with me in court. I walked out alone. Not handcuffed. Not smeared. Just clean. As I stepped into the parking lot, Maureen was already outside. She stood by her lawyer's sedan, arms folded, waiting for something. An apology, maybe. A last-minute truce. Or just the satisfaction of knowing I'd see her face one more time. I didn't stop. I walked past her. Didn't flinch. Didn't gloat. But as I opened my car door, I said just loud enough for her to hear, "This isn't vengeance. This was extraction." She didn't respond. Just stood there, hollowed out and shrinking by the second. That night, I got home and poured the last of the bourbon. No ice. My house was quiet. A different kind of quiet than before. Not grief. Not confusion. Just silence. Free of her. Free of them. The war was over. And like all wars, it didn't leave me whole. But it left me standing. And sometimes, that's enough.